What if everything you've been told about the divine feminine hating masculine energy is wrong? What if her frustration, her silence, her sudden detachment isn't hatred at all? What if it's a spiritual alarm bell? Let's start with a hard question. If the divine feminine truly disliked masculine energy, why would she feel so deeply affected by it? Why would his words linger in her mind? Why would his absence feel louder than his presence? Why would she oscillate between longing and resistance? You don't react that strongly to something you hate. You react that strongly to something that matters. And that's where the truth begins. On the surface, it looks simple. She pulls away. She becomes colder. She stops chasing. She no longer tolerates inconsistency. She calls out behavior she once ignored. She says things like, "I don't need this energy in my life." And from the outside, it can look like rejection of the masculine. But what if she's not rejecting masculine energy? What if she's rejecting distortion? There's a difference between masculine energy and wounded masculine behavior. And that distinction changes everything. Masculine energy in its pure form is direction. It is protection. It is grounded presence. It is leadership without control. It is action rooted in integrity. It is emotional steadiness that makes the feminine feel safe enough to soften. The divine feminine does not hate that. She craves that. What she cannot tolerate anymore is the shadow version, the inconsistency, the emotional unavailability, the ego games, the hot and cold cycles, the promises without action, the intensity without commitment. And here's the part no one talks about. Her dislike often begins the moment she awakens. Before awakening, she might have tolerated crumbs. She might have overgiven. She might have tried to prove her worth. She might have mistaken potential for reality. She might have romanticized struggle as depth. But awakening changes her nervous system. She starts feeling energy more clearly. She senses when words don't match actions. She notices when she's the only one carrying emotional depth. She becomes aware of how drained she feels after interactions that once excited her. It's not that she suddenly became cold. It's that she became conscious. And consciousness makes misalignment unbearable. Imagine this scenario. She meets him and there's instant recognition. The connection feels electric. Conversations flow. There's magnetism. She sees his potential. She feels his pain. She believes in who he could become. And for a while that hope sustains her. But then patterns emerge. He withdraws when things get real. He avoids difficult conversations. He minimizes her emotions. He keeps one foot in, one foot out. He says he cares, but his actions don't fully show up. And something inside her starts to shift. First, she tries to fix it. She communicates. She explains her needs. She softens her tone. She gives him space. She reassures him. She holds the emotional container for both of them. But slowly exhaustion sets in. She asks herself questions she avoided before. Why do I feel anxious after talking to him? Why do I feel like I have to earn consistency? Why does loving him feel like proving myself? Why am I carrying both hearts? And that's when the so-called dislike begins. But look closely. Is she angry at masculine energy? Or is she tired of feeling unsafe? Is she rejecting him? Or is she protecting herself? The divine feminine is deeply intuitive. She doesn't just hear what is said. She feels what is unsaid. She senses avoidance. She senses fear. She senses ego defenses disguised as strength. And when she grows spiritually, her tolerance for energetic chaos decreases. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Sometimes her frustration isn't just about him. It's about herself. Because every time she tolerated inconsistency, she abandoned herself. Every time she accepted less than she deserved, she betrayed her own intuition. Every time she overextended compassion without reciprocity, she drained her own life force. So when she finally pulls back, it looks like anger toward masculine energy. But beneath it is grief. Grief for the time she silenced her inner voice. Grief for the energy she poured into potential instead of reality. Grief for the love she gave without structure. And that grief can come out sharp. She might say, "I'm done with masculine energy." But what she often means is, "I'm done abandoning myself." There's a difference. Healthy masculine energy actually allows the divine feminine to relax. It provides clarity, communicates directly. It doesn't hide behind ambiguity. It doesn't disappear when emotions deepen. It doesn't see vulnerability as weakness. Healthy masculine energy makes her feel safe enough to open. Wounded masculine energy makes her feel like she has to brace herself. And when you've braced yourself long enough, your body eventually revolts. That revolt can look like anger, can look like detachment, can look like indifference. But indifference is often the final stage of self-preservation, not hatred. Let's go deeper. In many spiritual dynamics, especially intense soul connections, there is a mirror effect. The divine masculine may mirror her unhealed wounds, and she mirrors his. When he avoids vulnerability, it may trigger her abandonment wound. When he resists commitment, it may activate her fear of not being chosen. First, she leans in harder. She tries to love him through it. She believes her softness will heal him. But awakening teaches her something crucial. Love does not mean self-sacrifice without balance. Compassion does not mean tolerating emotional negligence. Understanding someone's trauma does not require enduring their patterns. And once she integrates that lesson, something powerful happens. She stops chasing, not because she doesn't care, but because she cares about herself. And this is where many misunderstand her transformation. When she stops pursuing, when she becomes quieter, when she withdraws her emotional labor, it can appear as if she has grown bitter toward masculine energy. But what if she has simply recalibrated her standards? What if she has decided that polarity requires structure? What if she has realized that attraction without stability is chaos? Ask yourself this: if she truly hated masculine energy, would she still long for grounded presence? Would she still desire leadership that feels safe? Would she still crave protection, decisiveness, and direction? No. She doesn't despise masculinity. She despises distortion. And here's the revelation that changes everything. The divine feminine's dislike is often a sacred boundary. It is her soul saying, I refuse to participate in imbalance. It is her nervous system saying, I no longer feel safe in inconsistency. It is her higher self saying, evolution requires alignment. And boundaries can feel harsh to those who benefited from her lack of them. So when she steps back, when she demands accountability, when she no longer entertains half-hearted effort, it may feel like rejection to the wounded masculine, but in reality it is invitation. An invitation to rise. Because true masculine energy does not shrink in the face of feminine power. It does not feel threatened by boundaries. It does not collapse under emotional depth. It stands. It leads. It shows up consistently. And the divine feminine in her awakened state will always respond to that. So the next time someone says the divine feminine hates masculine energy, pause. Look beneath the surface. She is not rejecting masculinity. She is rejecting immaturity. She is not against polarity. She is against chaos. She is not closing her heart. She is protecting it until it meets strength that matches its depth. And maybe the real question isn't why she dislikes masculine energy. Maybe the real question is, what version of masculine energy is she being offered? Because when it is aligned, conscious, accountable, and grounded, she doesn't run. She softens. And that changes everything. First glance, it looks simple. She's irritated. She's distant. She doesn't respond the way she used to. Her warmth feels guarded. Her softness feels selective. From the outside, people might say, she's overreacting. Or worse, she just doesn't like masculine energy. But surface-level conflict is rarely about what it appears to be. Because what you're witnessing is not dislike. It's accumulation. Let's explore what that actually means. In many sacred connections, especially intense soul bonds, the dynamic often begins with intensity. There's magnetic attraction, long conversations, emotional vulnerability that feels almost fated. It's intoxicating, feels rare, feels cosmic. But intensity and stability are not the same thing. In the beginning, the divine feminine may overlook small inconsistencies. A delayed response here, a vague plan there, a moment of emotional shutdown brushed aside as, he's just processing. She rationalizes. She empathizes. She gives grace. And grace is beautiful. until it becomes self-erasure. Surface-level conflict usually begins quietly. It's not explosive at first. It shows up in subtle tension, a sigh she didn't used to make, a pause before replying, a heaviness after conversations that once energized her. Have you ever noticed how conflict doesn't always start with shouting? Sometimes it starts with exhaustion. She might ask for clarity about the relationship, and he responds with deflection. She expresses a need for consistency, and he promises to try harder without real change. She opens up emotionally, and he retreats into silence. None of these moments alone seem catastrophic, but patterns are louder than events, and patterns create erosion. Imagine a shoreline. One wave doesn't change much, but thousands of waves over time reshape the landscape entirely. That's what repeated inconsistency does to trust. On the surface, it might look like she's picking fights, like she's suddenly more critical, like she's impossible to please. But ask yourself, is she truly demanding more? Or is she finally articulating what she always needed? Surface conflict often begins the moment she stops tolerating ambiguity. For example, he says he cares deeply, but he avoids defining the connection. He says she's important, but he disappears when things become emotionally intense. He says he's not ready, but he still wants access to her energy. And at some point, something inside her shifts. She starts noticing the contradiction, and contradiction creates internal tension. Here's where many misunderstand the divine feminine. She is not frustrated because she wants control. She is frustrated because she feels misalignment. Words and actions must match for her nervous system to feel safe. When they don't, her body registers it as instability, and instability over time feels unsafe. So she reacts, sometimes with silence, sometimes with direct confrontation, sometimes with withdrawal. From the outside, it can look like rejection of masculinity, but look closer. She is reacting to inconsistency. Let's paint a real-world example. She plans time together. She invests emotionally. She shows up fully present. He expresses affection when they're together. But once they part ways, communication becomes sporadic. Plans become uncertain. His energy feels unpredictable. She feels anxious. She tries to communicate that anxiety. He interprets her concern as pressure. Now the surface-level conflict escalates. She feels unseen. He feels criticized. She pushes for clarity. He withdraws to regain control. And just like that, the dynamic shifts into the classic runner-chaser polarity. But what is actually happening beneath the surface? She is seeking emotional safety. He is avoiding perceived emotional overwhelm. Neither of them hates the other. They are reacting from unintegrated wounds. Yet from the outside, observers might simplify it. She just doesn't like masculine energy. No. She doesn't like unpredictability disguised as strength. She doesn't like emotional distance labeled as independence. She doesn't like ego protection framed as leadership. Surface conflict intensifies when she awakens to her own worth. Before awakening, she might have overfunctioned in the connection. She may have initiated conversations, carried emotional discussions, and kept the bond alive with her effort. She believed love meant persistence. But awakening shifts her perspective. She begins asking new questions. Why am I the only one initiating depth? Why do I feel anxious asking for basic consistency? Why do I have to downplay my needs to keep the peace? And when those questions surface, tolerance decreases. Now, something interesting happens here. The divine masculine may perceive this shift as sudden hostility. He may think, she changed. But from her perspective, she finally stops suppressing discomfort. Surface-level conflict is often the first visible sign of deeper energetic imbalance. It's the smoke before you see the fire. Let's talk about irritation. Irritation is rarely about the present moment alone. It's often accumulated disappointment compressed into small triggers. A late reply that wouldn't have mattered months ago suddenly sparks frustration. A vague statement that once felt mysterious now feels evasive. Why? Because the emotional account has been overdrawn. Every unfulfilled promise, every avoided conversation, every moment of emotional absence deposits tension into the system. Eventually, even minor issues ignite major reactions. From the outside, it looks disproportionate. From the inside, it feels overdue. Here's a rhetorical question worth sitting with. If she truly despised masculine energy, would she have invested so much into the connection in the first place? Would she have tried to understand his fears? Would she have been patient during his shutdowns? Would she have held space for his confusion? Dislike doesn't invest that deeply. Love does. But love without reciprocity turns into resentment. And resentment, when unspoken, morphs into surface-level conflict. There's also a psychological component here. When someone feels emotionally unsafe but still deeply attached, the nervous system enters a state of hypervigilance. She starts analyzing tone shifts. She replays conversations. She tries to anticipate withdrawal before it happens. That constant alertness is exhausting. So eventually she stops. Not because she stopped caring, but because her body cannot sustain the anxiety. And when she stops overextending, it can look like coldness, but often it's self-regulation. Surface conflict is also intensified by miscommunication about polarity. True masculine energy thrives on clarity and action. True feminine energy thrives on emotional depth and connection. When both are healthy, they complement each other beautifully. But when wounded, masculine energy avoids vulnerability, and wounded feminine energy overcompensates with emotional pursuit. That imbalance creates friction. She feels she is doing too much. He feels she is asking for too much. But what if neither is too much? What if they are simply misaligned in emotional readiness? Surface-level conflict is the visible symptom of inner misalignment. Let's be honest. Sometimes she does get angry. Sometimes her words are sharp. Sometimes she withdraws completely. But anger is not hatred. Anger is often unmet need with a voice. When she says, "I can't deal with this energy anymore," she might really mean, "I can't keep betraying myself." When she says, "I'm tired," she might mean, "I'm tired of carrying both sides." And when she pulls away, she might not be rejecting him. She might be reclaiming herself. That reclamation can feel threatening to someone who relied on her emotional labor. But it is not an attack on masculinity. It is a refusal to participate in imbalance. Surface-level conflict is the stage where illusions crack. The fantasy of effortless intensity gives way to the reality of emotional maturity. The spark is no longer enough. Chemistry without consistency becomes draining instead of exciting. And here's the most important realization of this chapter. The divine feminine's visible irritation is often the first honest expression of her boundaries. Boundaries feel confrontational only to dynamics that depended on their absence. So the next time you witness her distance, her frustration, or her firmness, don't rush to label it as dislike of masculine energy. Look deeper. She is not rejecting polarity. She is rejecting unpredictability. She is not anti-masculine. She is anti-inconsistency. And surface conflict, uncomfortable as it may be, is often the necessary beginning of transformation. Because when illusion dissolves, truth finally has space to speak. And truth, even when tense, is far more sacred than silent suffering. Now we need to separate something that is often misunderstood. Masculine energy is not the problem. Wounded masculine energy is. And if we don't make that distinction clearly, the entire dynamic becomes distorted. Because when the divine feminine reacts strongly, withdraws, or expresses frustration, she is rarely responding to grounded, healthy masculinity. She is responding to its shadow expression. So what is wounded masculine energy? It's not strength. It's not leadership. It's not emotional steadiness. It's protection mechanisms disguised as power. Wounded masculine energy often looks like emotional unavailability framed as independence. It looks like avoidance labeled as needing space. It looks like control disguised as decisiveness. It looks like pride masquerading as confidence. And here's the subtle part. Wounded masculine energy doesn't always appear toxic at first. In fact, it can appear magnetic. Detached confidence can feel mysterious. Emotional restraint can feel stable. Intensity without vulnerability can feel powerful. But over time, the cracks begin to show. Because true masculine energy builds safety, wounded masculine energy creates uncertainty. Let's explore how this plays out in real connection. Imagine a man who is deeply attracted to the divine feminine. He feels the pull. He senses the depth. He recognizes something different about her. But instead of leaning into vulnerability, he leans into control. He keeps conversations light when they begin to deepen. He avoids defining the relationship. He withholds emotional transparency to maintain leverage. He says, "Let's just see where this goes," even when his feelings are intense. Why? Because vulnerability feels like exposure, and exposure feels dangerous. Many men operating from wounded masculine energy were conditioned to suppress emotion. They were taught that softness equals weakness, that emotional expression equals loss of control, that needing someone equals dependency. So when they encounter the divine feminine's emotional depth, it doesn't just attract them, it destabilizes them. Her intuition sees through him. Her emotional intelligence senses what he hasn't processed. Her presence challenges his defenses. And instead of surrendering to growth, wounded masculine energy often retreats into ego. Ego says, "Stay in control." Ego says, "Don't reveal too much." Ego says, "If she needs clarity, she's being demanding." But what ego doesn't understand is that the divine feminine isn't asking for control. She's asking for congruence. Wounded masculine energy struggles with congruence because it fears exposure. Let's talk about inconsistency. One of the most common traits of wounded masculine energy is fluctuation. Hot and cold behavior. Intense connection followed by emotional distance. Grand gestures followed by silence. This inconsistency isn't random. It's internal conflict. When he feels safe and connected, he leans in. When intimacy deepens and vulnerability increases, fear activates. He pulls back to regulate himself. But to her nervous system, that push-pull feels destabilizing. She begins questioning herself. Did I say too much? Did I expect too much? Am I overwhelming him? Over time, this dynamic chips away at her sense of security. And here's the critical point. Wounded masculine energy doesn't just affect her emotionally. It activates her survival responses. When someone becomes unpredictable, the body goes into alert mode. She may start analyzing patterns, anticipating withdrawal, adjusting her tone to avoid triggering him. That's not romance. That's hypervigilance. And hypervigilance eventually turns into resentment. Now let's examine pride. Wounded masculine energy often clings to pride as armor. Admitting mistakes feels humiliating. Apologizing feels like losing status. Asking for reassurance feels weak. So instead of saying, "I was scared," he might say, "You're overreacting." Instead of saying, "I don't know how to handle my emotions," he might say, "You're too emotional." Instead of saying, "I care deeply," he might say nothing at all. Silence becomes safer than exposure. But silence creates emotional starvation for the divine feminine. She doesn't need perfection. She needs honesty. And wounded masculine energy confuses honesty with vulnerability, which it perceives as threat. Another manifestation is emotional minimalism. He may provide just enough attention to keep the connection alive, but not enough to fully nourish it. Just enough affection to maintain hope. Just enough engagement to avoid losing her completely. This half-presence is exhausting because it creates ambiguity. And ambiguity keeps her suspended between hope and doubt. Wounded masculine energy also struggles with accountability. If something goes wrong, he may externalize blame. Timing wasn't right. Work was stressful. She misunderstood. Circumstances were complicated. There's always a reason, but rarely ownership. Ownership requires emotional maturity, and emotional maturity requires confronting internal wounds. Now here's where things get deeper. Wounded masculine energy often originates from unhealed father wounds, societal pressure, or past rejection. Perhaps he was taught to suppress emotion. Perhaps vulnerability was mocked in his childhood. Perhaps previous heartbreak convinced him that emotional distance equals safety. So when he withholds, it's not always malicious. It's protective. But protection without awareness becomes damage. Because while he is protecting himself from perceived emotional risk, she is absorbing emotional instability. And the longer this continues, the more her dislike grows. But again, let's be clear. She does not dislike masculinity. She dislikes emotional immaturity that hides behind masculinity. Healthy masculine energy looks very different. It is steady, not reactive. It communicates directly instead of indirectly. It can say, I'm scared, but I'm here. It takes responsibility without collapsing into shame. It listens without feeling attacked. It leads without dominating. And when the divine feminine encounters healthy masculine energy, she does not resist it. She relaxes into it. Her body softens. Her voice becomes warmer. Her creativity expands, because safety unlocks her radiance. But when wounded masculine energy dominates the connection, she contracts. She guards her heart. She becomes sharper in her communication. She starts building walls, not because she wants to overpower him, but because she is protecting her own emotional well-being. Let's consider a scenario. He feels deeply connected to her. He envisions a future. But instead of expressing that openly, he keeps options open just in case. He maintains ambiguity to avoid full emotional investment. When she senses this, she confronts him. He responds with defensiveness. Now tension escalates. From his perspective, she is pressuring him. From her perspective, he is withholding commitment. Both feel misunderstood. But beneath it all is fear. His fear of losing autonomy. Her fear of losing stability. Wounded masculine energy often equates commitment with loss of freedom. But healthy masculine energy understands that commitment is chosen structure, not confinement. When he operates from wounds, he resists structure. When he operates from strength, he creates it. And here's the painful irony. The divine feminine often sees his potential before he sees it himself. She senses his depth beneath the armor. She feels his capacity for growth. That vision keeps her invested longer than logic would advise. But loving someone's potential while experiencing their wounds creates inner conflict. She knows who he could be, but she is living with who he currently is. That gap between potential and reality becomes unbearable over time. And eventually, she reaches a threshold. She stops trying to convince him to grow. She stops explaining the same boundaries. She stops overanalyzing his behavior. She detaches, not because love disappeared, but because self-respect awakened. Wounded masculine energy often misinterprets this detachment as rejection, but in truth it is consequence. You cannot consistently provide emotional uncertainty and expect unwavering emotional access. And here's the deeper spiritual truth. The divine feminine's resistance is often a mirror. Her withdrawal forces him to confront his own avoidance. Her boundaries expose his immaturity. Her silence amplifies his internal conflict. Because when she is no longer chasing, he must face himself. And that confrontation can feel uncomfortable. But discomfort is not punishment. It is invitation. Invitation to evolve. Invitation to integrate emotion with strength. Invitation to redefine masculinity not as control, but as conscious presence. So when we speak about the divine feminine's dislike of masculine energy, we must refine the language. She does not resist strength. She resists instability. She does not reject leadership. She rejects ego. She does not fear masculine power. She fears inconsistency. And the moment masculine energy shifts from wounded to conscious, something profound happens. She stops bracing. She stops guarding. She opens again. Because at her core, she does not want separation. She wants alignment. But alignment requires maturity. And until wounded masculine energy chooses growth over ego, her boundaries will remain firm, not as punishment, but as protection. Because the divine feminine may love deeply, but she will no longer love at the cost of herself. There is a moment in every divine feminine's journey when something irreversible happens. It is quiet at first. No dramatic explosion. No grand announcement. No obvious turning point. Just a subtle internal shift. A realization. A remembering. And once it happens, she can never go back to who she was before. This is the awakening. Before awakening, she may have loved unconsciously. She gave generously. She empathized deeply. She held space endlessly. She believed that if she loved harder, communicated better, or remained patient longer, the connection would stabilize. She thought endurance was devotion. She thought understanding was enough. But awakening disrupts that belief system. Awakening is not just spiritual enlightenment. It is nervous system clarity. It is emotional self-recognition. It is the moment she stops confusing chaos with passion. And when she awakens, her tolerance changes. Let's explore what that really means. Before awakening, she may have accepted mixed signals as complexity. She romanticized emotional distance as mystery. She saw his inconsistency as something she could heal with enough love. But awakening removes fantasy. Suddenly, what once felt intense begins to feel unstable. What once felt magnetic begins to feel draining. What once felt destined begins to feel imbalanced. She starts noticing patterns she ignored before. She notices how often she initiates emotional depth. She notices how frequently she over-explains her feelings. She notices how much energy she expends trying to keep harmony. And then the question arises, why am I doing all the emotional labor? That question alone changes everything. Awakening sharpens perception. The divine feminine becomes hyper-aware of energetic exchanges. She can feel when effort is not reciprocated. She senses when attention is conditional. She detects when affection is inconsistent. Her intuition becomes louder than her hope. And when intuition grows louder than hope, illusion collapses. This is often the phase where outsiders say, "She changed." Yes, she did. But not in the way people assume. She did not become colder. She became clearer. There's a difference. Clarity removes excuses. It removes rationalizations. It removes the stories she once told herself to justify misalignment. For example, he's just busy. He's afraid to open up. He'll come around. He doesn't know how to express himself. These statements may still hold truth. But awakening introduces a new layer. Even if that's true, does it feel safe for me? Awakening shifts her focus from understanding him to honoring herself. And that shift can feel threatening to wounded masculine energy. Before, she absorbed emotional tension. Now she names it. Before, she adapted to inconsistency. Now she questions it. Before, she waited. Now she evaluates. Awakening does something profound to her nervous system. It recalibrates what feels acceptable. Things she once tolerated now feel intolerable. Not because she's dramatic. Not because she's impatient. But because her body no longer agrees to emotional instability. When she awakens, she begins recognizing the difference between intensity and intimacy. Intensity feels electrifying but unstable. Intimacy feels steady but grounded. Before awakening, she may have mistaken intensity for depth. The highs and lows felt passionate. The push-pull dynamic felt faded. After awakening, she realizes something sobering. If I feel anxious more than I feel secure, this is not sacred. This realization can create friction in the connection. Because when she changes internally, the dynamic must change externally. Let's imagine a scenario. She used to text first every morning. She used to initiate difficult conversations. She used to reassure him when he withdrew. She used to chase clarity. After awakening, she stops. Not to manipulate. Not to punish. But because she no longer feels aligned with overextending. She waits to see if he steps forward. If he does, she notices. If he doesn't, she also notices. This is where the illusion of dislike often emerges. He may perceive her silence as coldness. But her silence is observation. He may perceive her boundaries as rejection. But her boundaries are alignment. Awakening also intensifies her sensitivity to energy. The divine feminine is naturally intuitive. But when awakened, that intuition becomes undeniable. She can feel when something is off even if words are reassuring. She can detect emotional distance before it becomes visible. And once you can feel misalignment that clearly, pretending becomes impossible. Here's another key shift that awakening brings. She stops trying to save him. Before awakening, she might have believed her love could heal his wounds. She saw his potential and wanted to help him embody it. She mistook compassion for responsibility. But awakening teaches her a hard truth. Healing is self-chosen. No amount of love can force someone into emotional maturity. So she releases the savior role. That release can feel like withdrawal to him. But in reality, it is empowerment for her. Awakening also confronts her with her own patterns. She realizes she was drawn to inconsistency. She recognizes how she equated struggle with meaning. She sees how she overgave to feel valued. This self-awareness is humbling. And it strengthens her. Because now her growth is not about fixing him. It's about integrating herself. She begins prioritizing her peace over the connection's potential. She begins valuing stability over intensity. She begins choosing environments where she doesn't have to shrink. And here's where the tension deepens. If he remains in wounded masculine energy while she evolves, the energetic gap widens. She grows quieter. He grows more confused. She becomes more grounded. He feels destabilized. Not because she hates masculine energy, but because she no longer aligns with its wounded expression. Awakening often introduces grief. She grieves the fantasy she once believed in. She grieves the version of him she hoped would emerge. She grieves the emotional investment she made. And grief can look like anger, can look like detachment, can look like indifference. But beneath it is mourning. Mourning the connection she thought would rise with her. Now here's the paradox. Awakening does not make her anti-masculine. It makes her deeply selective. She no longer responds to words alone. She responds to action. She no longer romanticizes emotional unavailability. She seeks emotional availability with strength. She no longer chases validation. She expects reciprocity. This expectation is not arrogance. It is alignment. And alignment sometimes requires walking away from what no longer matches your frequency. Let's pause for a moment. If she truly disliked masculine energy, would she still long for grounded leadership? Would she still desire a partner who takes initiative? Would she still crave a presence that feels safe and decisive? Of course she would. Her awakening doesn't erase her polarity. It refines it. She wants masculine energy, but conscious masculine energy. She wants direction, but not dominance. She wants strength, but not ego. She wants protection, but not control. Awakening sharpens discernment. And discernment can look like distance to those who benefited from her lack of it. The most powerful transformation in her awakening is this. She stops negotiating her worth. She no longer proves she is lovable. She no longer explains why consistency matters. She no longer shrinks her needs to avoid discomfort. And once she reaches that point, there is no return. Because self-respect, once embodied, cannot be undone. The divine feminine's awakening is not an attack. It is evolution. It is her stepping into alignment with her higher self. And if masculine energy wishes to meet her there, it must evolve too. Otherwise, the distance between them becomes inevitable. Her awakening is not rejection. It is invitation. Invitation to rise. Invitation to mature. Invitation to integrate vulnerability with strength. But she will not lower herself back into unconscious tolerance to preserve the connection. Because now she understands something she didn't before. Love without safety is not sacred. Intensity without stability is not destiny. And devotion without reciprocity is self-abandonment. When the divine feminine awakens, she doesn't close her heart. She protects it with wisdom. And that wisdom is what changes the entire dynamic. Because from this point forward, she will not chase potential. She will align with reality. And reality must meet her at the level she has risen to. There is a layer beneath the conflict that most people never see. Beneath the irritation. Beneath the silence. Beneath the frustration. There is a mirror. And that mirror is not comfortable. In sacred connections, especially those that feel karmic, fated, or spiritually charged, there is often an invisible exchange happening beyond words. It's not just two personalities interacting. It's two nervous systems. Two childhoods, two wound patterns, two subconscious survival strategies colliding. And when the divine feminine reacts strongly to masculine energy, it is often because something ancient inside her has been touched. Not the present moment, the past. This is where trauma mirrors come in. A trauma mirror occurs when someone's behavior unconsciously activates unresolved wounds within you. It's not necessarily intentional. It's energetic resonance. For example, if she carries an abandonment wound, inconsistency feels catastrophic. A delayed reply doesn't just feel like a delayed reply. Feels like being left emotionally. Feels like being forgotten. Feels like history repeating itself. If she grew up needing to overperform to receive love, she may unconsciously overgive in relationships. She may try to anticipate his needs, soothe his moods, maintain harmony at all costs. And when masculine energy withdraws, even subtly, it doesn't just trigger discomfort. It triggers memory. Not always conscious memory, but emotional memory. And emotional memory is powerful. Let's imagine a situation. He pulls back after an intense weekend together. Communication slows. His tone becomes neutral. He says he's busy or processing. Objectively, that might be reasonable. But internally, her nervous system spikes. Why? Because withdrawal feels familiar. Maybe a parent once became distant when she expressed too much emotion. Maybe love in her childhood was unpredictable. Maybe affection came and went without warning. So when he pulls away, her body doesn't register it as a temporary shift. It registers it as danger. Now here's the critical insight. She might think she's reacting to him, but she's also reacting to old pain. This doesn't invalidate her experience. Deepens it, because trauma mirrors work both ways. If he carries a fear of engulfment, perhaps from growing up with controlling dynamics, her emotional intensity might feel suffocating to him. If he associates vulnerability with loss of control, her desire for emotional clarity might trigger defensiveness. So he retreats. And when he retreats, she pursues. And when she pursues, he retreats further. It becomes a loop. From the outside, it looks like incompatibility. From the inside, it's unhealed attachment patterns colliding. Now let's ask a difficult question. Is she rejecting him? Or is she rejecting the way he makes her old wounds feel alive again? Because there is a difference. The divine feminine is deeply intuitive, but intuition can become clouded when trauma is activated. She may interpret emotional distance as lack of love. She may interpret hesitation as rejection. She may interpret ambiguity as abandonment. And once triggered, her nervous system seeks control. She might ask more questions, seek more reassurance, push for clarity, not because she wants dominance, but because she wants safety. However, if he operates from wounded masculine energy, he may interpret her search for safety as pressure. So instead of leaning in and reassuring her, he withdraws further. And this deepens the trigger. It's important to understand that trauma triggers do not mean the connection is false. Often, they mean the connection is transformative. But transformation requires awareness. Without awareness, triggers create resentment. Let's go deeper into emotional triggers. An emotional trigger is not just a feeling. It's a physiological response. The heart rate changes. The breathing shifts. The mind races. The body prepares for threat. When she feels ignored, her body may enter fight or flight. She may overanalyze messages. She may imagine worst-case scenarios. She may become irritable or distant. From the outside, it looks like she suddenly doesn't like masculine energy. But internally, she is trying to regulate a nervous system that feels destabilized. And here's the nuance. Sometimes her frustration toward masculine energy is actually frustration toward the part of herself that still reacts from old wounds. She may think, why does this affect me so much? Why can't I just detach? Why do I feel anxious when he pulls away? That self-judgment adds another layer of emotional tension. Now consider this. If she truly didn't care, would she be triggered? Indifference doesn't activate trauma. Attachment does. This is why trauma mirrors are so intense in spiritually significant connections. The deeper the attachment, the louder the triggers. But trauma mirrors also serve a purpose. They reveal what is unhealed. They expose attachment styles. They force confrontation with subconscious patterns. For example, if she constantly chooses emotionally unavailable partners, that pattern didn't begin with him. He may simply be the clearest mirror of it. Similarly, if he repeatedly attracts emotionally expressive partners and feels overwhelmed, that pattern also predates her. The mirror is not punishment. It is revelation. However, revelation without healing can turn into projection. She may project past abandonment onto his temporary withdrawal. He may project past control onto her request for clarity. Projection distorts reality. Suddenly, small behaviors feel catastrophic. Now let's examine resentment. If her abandonment wound is repeatedly activated, resentment builds. Not only toward him but toward the dynamic itself. She may start saying, I'm tired of masculine energy. But what she may truly mean is, I'm tired of feeling abandoned. See the distinction? The target shifts. Instead of recognizing the trigger, the mind generalizes. Masculine energy becomes the villain. But the deeper issue is unresolved trauma being reactivated. This is not about blame. It's about awareness. When trauma mirrors are recognized, something powerful can happen. Instead of reacting automatically, she can pause and ask, is this response about the present moment? Or is this touching something older? That pause changes the dynamic, because conscious awareness interrupts the loop. And if he becomes aware of his own triggers, his fear of vulnerability, his fear of engulfment, his fear of failure, he can also interrupt his withdrawal pattern. Without awareness, trauma mirrors create cycles. With awareness, they create growth. Let's imagine a healthier version of the same scenario. He pulls back after emotional intensity. She notices her anxiety rising. Instead of immediately confronting him from panic, she regulates herself first. She acknowledges the trigger. When they talk, she expresses her experience without accusation. When communication slows suddenly, I notice I feel anxious. I'm working on that, but clarity helps me feel grounded. If he operates from conscious masculine energy, he responds with reassurance instead of defensiveness. I didn't realize that shift affected you. I'm not pulling away. I just needed time to process. That exchange diffuses the trigger. But if he responds from wounded energy, you're overthinking. The trigger intensifies. And repeated invalidation transforms triggers into boundaries. Eventually, she may withdraw not because she hates masculine energy, but because repeated triggers without resolution feel unsafe. There's another layer here. Sometimes the divine feminine's dislike of masculine energy emerges when she realizes she has been unconsciously reenacting childhood patterns. That realization can be painful. She might see how she chased love that was inconsistent because inconsistency felt familiar. She might recognize how she tried to earn stability because stability was never guaranteed in her past. And once she sees the pattern, she cannot unsee it. So she changes. She stops tolerating behaviors that activate her trauma. From the outside, it appears as rejection. From the inside, it is healing. And here is the profound truth. Trauma mirrors are not meant to bind two people in suffering. They are meant to reveal what must be healed individually. If both parties choose growth, the connection evolves into something stable and transformative. If one chooses growth and the other resists it, the connection fractures. Not because of hatred, but because frequencies diverge. The divine feminine's awakening often includes recognizing her triggers without shame. It includes taking responsibility for her healing, without tolerating continued activation. She understands that healing her abandonment wound does not require staying in situations that repeatedly reopen it. She can work on her nervous system while still honoring her need for consistency. And that's the balance. Because healing does not mean accepting harm. Growth does not mean enduring instability. And love does not mean reliving trauma. So when the divine feminine appears to dislike masculine energy, look deeper. She may be rejecting the parts of the dynamic that keep her wounds inflamed. She may be stepping away from patterns that mirror pain instead of partnership. She may be choosing regulation over reaction. And that is not bitterness. It is maturity. The mirror revealed something. Now the choice is what to do with that reflection. Heal. Or repeat. And once she becomes conscious of the pattern, repetition is no longer an option. Because awareness changes everything. At this point in the journey, something must be clarified with precision. Not all masculine energy is equal. There is ego-driven masculinity. And there is sacred masculinity. From the outside, they can look similar. Both may appear confident. Both may appear strong. Both may appear decisive. But internally, they are fundamentally different frequencies. And the divine feminine feels that difference instantly. When she reacts negatively, withdraws, or resists, it is rarely in response to sacred masculinity. It is almost always in response to ego. So what is ego-driven masculinity? Ego-driven masculinity is rooted in insecurity masked as power. It relies on control to feel safe. It equates dominance with leadership. It resists vulnerability because vulnerability threatens identity. Ego says, I must win. I must be right. I cannot show weakness. I cannot admit I am unsure. Sacred masculinity says something very different. It says, I am grounded enough to listen. I can lead without overpowering. I can admit when I'm wrong. I can hold emotional depth without collapsing. The distinction may seem subtle, but energetically it is profound. Ego-driven masculinity often performs strength. Sacred masculinity embodies it. Let's explore how this plays out in real connection. Imagine a disagreement. The divine feminine expresses hurt. She explains that a certain behavior made her feel unseen. Ego-driven masculinity immediately interprets this as criticism, feels attacked, feels diminished, so it deflects. You're too sensitive. You're overthinking. That's not what I meant. The goal becomes self-protection, not understanding. But sacred masculinity responds differently. It does not crumble under feedback. It does not equate emotional expression with attack. Pauses. It listens. It says, I didn't realize that affected you that way. Tell me more. Do you see the difference? One protects identity. The other protects connection. The divine feminine does not resist strength. She resists emotional immaturity disguised as strength. Now let's examine control. Ego-driven masculinity often feels safest when it controls the pace, the depth, and the direction of the relationship. It may delay commitment to maintain leverage. It may withhold clarity to avoid vulnerability. It may create ambiguity to feel powerful. Control feels safe to ego because it prevents exposure. But sacred masculinity does not need control to feel powerful. It understands that true leadership requires transparency. It recognizes that consistency builds trust. It sees commitment not as loss of freedom, but as chosen direction. Sacred masculinity leads through steadiness, not unpredictability. And here's the crucial insight. The divine feminine softens in the presence of sacred masculinity. She does not compete with it. She does not guard herself against it. She does not feel the need to overcompensate, because sacred masculinity feels safe. Ego-driven masculinity often triggers her defenses. She may become sharper in tone, more analytical, more guarded. She may feel the need to assert boundaries more firmly. From the outside, it may look like she dislikes masculine energy, but she is responding to imbalance. Now let's talk about vulnerability. Ego-driven masculinity avoids vulnerability because it equates emotion with weakness. It fears that expressing uncertainty will diminish attraction. It believes that maintaining composure at all costs equals strength. But sacred masculinity understands something deeper. Vulnerability does not weaken polarity, deepens intimacy. When a man can say, I felt scared when you pulled away, instead of pretending indifference, he demonstrates grounded strength. When he can admit confusion without collapsing into insecurity, he shows integration. The divine feminine does not lose respect for vulnerability. She loses respect for emotional dishonesty, because when ego hides emotion, it creates emotional starvation in the connection. She begins to feel alone even when he is physically present. And loneliness within partnership is more painful than solitude. Let's consider leadership. Ego-driven masculinity may attempt to dominate decisions. It may insist on being in charge to maintain authority. It may resist compromise because compromise feels like weakness. But sacred masculinity leads with awareness. It makes decisions while considering emotional impact. It invites collaboration without surrendering direction. Leadership is not loud. It is stable. And stability is deeply attractive to the divine feminine. Here's a powerful question. Why does the divine feminine often become exhausted in ego-driven dynamics? Because she unconsciously compensates. When masculine energy becomes inconsistent, she becomes hyper-aware. When masculine energy becomes emotionally distant, she increases emotional expression. When masculine energy avoids accountability, she over-explains. She fills the gaps. But in sacred polarity, she doesn't have to. Sacred masculinity holds structure. It creates rhythm, follows through. And when she feels that consistency, her nervous system relaxes. Her creativity expands. Her nurturing deepens. Her sensuality awakens. This is the irony many misunderstand. The divine feminine does not want to overpower masculine energy. She wants to trust it. But trust requires integrity. Now let's examine pride. Ego-driven masculinity struggles deeply with pride. It may resist apologizing. It may justify harmful behavior. It may prioritize being right over being connected. Sacred masculinity understands that accountability does not diminish authority, strengthens it. When a man can say, "I handled that poorly," he does not lose power. He gains respect. The divine feminine recognizes the difference instantly. She feels when apology is forced. She feels when accountability is authentic. And authenticity is what restores polarity. Another key distinction lies in emotional regulation. Ego-driven masculinity may shut down during conflict. It may stonewall. It may withdraw completely to avoid emotional discomfort. Sacred masculinity remains present. It may need space, but it communicates that need clearly. It does not disappear without explanation. It does not punish with silence. Presence is power. Absence used as control is insecurity. And this is where the divine feminine draws the line. She does not resent strength. She resents instability framed as strength. She does not resist direction. She resists emotional neglect. When ego dominates masculine energy, it creates friction. When sacred masculinity emerges, it creates harmony. Let's paint two contrasting scenarios. In the first, he feels threatened by her independence. He subtly competes with her success. He withdraws when she shines too brightly. His ego feels diminished by her growth. In the second, he celebrates her expansion. He feels proud of her strength. He supports her vision while maintaining his own. Her radiance does not intimidate him. Which dynamic do you think she softens into? Sacred masculinity is not intimidated by feminine power. It is strengthened by it, because it does not measure worth through comparison. It measures worth through integrity. Here's another important layer. Ego-driven masculinity often seeks validation externally. It may need admiration to feel secure. It may crave attention to reinforce identity. Sacred masculinity finds validation internally. It does not rely on conquest. It values depth over quantity. And the divine feminine feels safe with internal stability. Because external validation patterns create unpredictability. Now let's return to the core theme. When people say the divine feminine dislikes masculine energy, they are misunderstanding her reaction to ego. She does not reject sacred masculinity. She yearns for it. But she will not tolerate ego-driven distortion. And as she awakens, her discernment sharpens. She can sense when masculinity is rooted in fear. She can sense when it is rooted in consciousness. And once she has experienced sacred masculinity, even briefly, she cannot settle for ego again. As ego feels loud but hollow, sacred masculinity feels quiet but powerful. The path from ego to sacred masculinity requires humility. It requires self-reflection. It requires integration of vulnerability with strength. And when that integration occurs, something extraordinary happens. The dynamic shifts effortlessly. She no longer feels the need to test him. She no longer feels hypervigilant. She no longer feels defensive. She relaxes because she feels held, not controlled, seen, not judged, chosen, not managed. Sacred masculinity does not suppress the divine feminine. It amplifies her. And when that frequency is present, her so-called dislike dissolves completely. Because she was never resisting masculinity. She was resisting ego. And once ego is replaced with conscious strength, polarity returns in its most beautiful form. Balanced, stable, alive, and deeply aligned. There is a phase in this journey that almost no one prepares you for. It's not the magical beginning. It's not the obsessive longing during separation. It's not even the dramatic breakdown that forces awakening. It's something quieter, more dangerous. It's the moment when love is still there, but it no longer feels soft, feels heavy. And this is where the divine feminine's dislike of masculine energy often reaches its peak. But here's the real question. How can you deeply love someone and simultaneously feel resistant to their energy? Let's go deeper. The slow build of emotional fatigue. At first, the divine feminine is patient. She understands the journey. She understands trauma. She understands that the divine masculine may be awakening at a different pace. She holds space. She explains. She forgives. Again, and again, and again. But eventually something shifts. Not because she stops loving him, but because she starts loving herself more. And when self-love rises, tolerance for emotional inconsistency decreases. The resentment doesn't appear overnight. It accumulates. Every unread message, every broken promise, every moment she had to be the emotionally aware one, it builds like invisible sediment at the bottom of a lake, until one day she feels tired. Not dramatic, not explosive, just tired. And that fatigue transforms love into resistance, carrying the emotional weight alone. In many twin flame dynamics, the divine feminine becomes the emotional anchor. She initiates the conversations. She addresses the tension. She expresses vulnerability. She analyzes patterns. She does the inner work and then tries to help him see it too. But what happens when she feels like she's the only one doing the emotional labor? Let's imagine a scenario. He withdraws after a deep, intimate conversation. She feels the shift instantly. Her intuition screams, something changed. Instead of lashing out, she tries to communicate gently. Did something come up for you? He replies, I'm just busy. It's nothing. You're overthinking. And in that moment, something subtle happens. She feels alone. Not physically alone, emotionally alone. And emotional loneliness inside a connection that once felt sacred is one of the most painful experiences possible. So the frustration grows, not because she wants conflict, but because she no longer wants to carry the emotional depth alone. Love without safety becomes exhaustion. Here is a truth that many divine feminines are afraid to admit. Love without emotional safety eventually feels like danger. Not physical danger, energetic danger. When the masculine energy is inconsistent, present one week, distant the next, her nervous system can't relax. She can't soften. She can't surrender. And surrender is the natural state of the feminine when she feels safe. Instead of flowing, she braces. Instead of opening, she guards. Instead of trusting, she scans for the next withdrawal. This is when love starts to feel like survival. And no one can stay in survival mode forever. So resistance becomes protection. The moment she stops chasing, there is always a defining moment. It might not look dramatic from the outside, but internally it is seismic. It's the moment she decides, I'm not doing this anymore. Not in anger, but in clarity. She stops initiating. She stops explaining. She stops trying to decode his silence. And when she pulls back, the energy changes instantly. The dynamic that once felt like pursuit and retreat now feels still. Sometimes the divine masculine feels this immediately. Sometimes he doesn't. But for her, something has shifted permanently. Because when the divine feminine withdraws emotionally, it's rarely impulsive. It's the result of deep exhaustion. And this is often misinterpreted as dislike. But what it really is self-preservation. Resentment as a sign of growth. Here's something uncomfortable. Resentment is often a sign that a boundary has been crossed too many times. Not necessarily intentionally, but repeatedly. When the divine feminine begins to feel irritated by behavior she once tolerated, it doesn't mean she has become cold. It means she has evolved. What she accepted before awakening, she can no longer accept after awakening. Mixed signals. Emotional breadcrumbs. Half commitments. They used to feel romantic, mysterious, intense. Now they feel draining. Why? Because she has tasted her own wholeness. And once you know your worth, inconsistency feels insulting, not exciting. The hidden grief beneath the anger. If you look closely at her frustration, you'll find something softer underneath. Grief. She isn't angry because she doesn't care. She's angry because she sees the potential. She has glimpsed the depth of what this connection could be. She has felt the soul recognition. And watching that potential remain unrealized hurts. It's like standing in front of a locked door, knowing paradise is on the other side. But the key requires mutual courage. So she feels grief for the version of him that shows up fully only sometimes. The future that feels close but never materializes. The intimacy that comes in waves instead of stability. And grief, when unprocessed, often disguises itself as anger. When passion turns into resistance. Interestingly, the same intensity that once created magnetic attraction now fuels tension. Why? Because polarity without maturity becomes friction. The divine feminine still feels the pull, still feels the chemistry, still feels the soul tie. But now it activates irritation instead of excitement. She may find herself thinking, why do I still care? Why does his energy affect me this much? Why can't he just step up? These questions don't come from indifference. They come from a heart that wants alignment. And when alignment doesn't happen, the body begins to resist what the soul once welcomed. The burnout phase. Every sacred connection has a burnout phase if healing is delayed. It's the phase where conversations feel repetitive, apologies feel empty, passion feels complicated, hope feels fragile. The divine feminine may even question the entire connection. Was this real? Did I imagine the depth? Was I just projecting potential? This doubt isn't weakness. It's a nervous system seeking relief. Because constant emotional highs and lows create instability, and instability creates burnout. Burnout is not the absence of love. It's the consequence of loving without balance, the sacred turning point. But here's the deeper layer. This resistance phase is not the end. It's a turning point. Because when love turns into resistance, both energies are forced to confront the imbalance. The divine feminine can no longer overgive. The divine masculine can no longer hide behind avoidance without consequences. The dynamic must evolve or dissolve. And this is where true transformation becomes possible. Because resistance is energy demanding alignment. It's not hatred. It's not rejection. It's not failure. It's the soul saying, this cannot continue in its current form. A question for reflection. If she truly didn't love him, would it hurt this much? If she truly didn't care, would his silence still echo? If she truly disliked masculine energy, would she still crave the grounded presence of a healed man? The answer reveals everything. Her resistance is not against masculinity. It is against emotional immaturity. It is against inconsistency. It is against carrying a sacred connection alone. And once that becomes clear, something powerful happens. The narrative shifts. She is not bitter. She is becoming sovereign. She is not cold. She is conserving her energy. She is not rejecting love. She is demanding reciprocity. The real revelation. When love turns into resistance, it's not a sign that the divine feminine has fallen out of love. It's a sign that she refuses to abandon herself for love. And that is the most divine expression of feminine power. Because true union is not built on one soul holding the emotional weight for two. It is built on two healed energies choosing each other consciously. So if you are in this phase where love feels heavy, where frustration sits beside longing, understand this. You are not broken. You are awakening to balance. And sometimes resistance is the bridge between illusion and truth. Here is the paradox no one talks about. The deeper the frustration, the deeper the love often runs. On the surface, it may look like irritation, coldness, detachment, even indifference. But beneath that surface, there is something far more vulnerable. Because when the divine feminine truly stops caring, she doesn't become angry. She becomes neutral. And neutrality feels nothing like the fire of frustration. So let's ask the question most people are afraid to ask. If she truly didn't love him, why does it still hurt? Frustration is not the opposite of love. We've been taught that love and anger are opposites. They're not. Indifference is the opposite of love. Frustration, on the other hand, is love unmet. It's love that sees potential but experiences inconsistency. It's love that remembers connection but faces distance. It's love that longs for alignment but encounters avoidance. The divine feminine's frustration is often misread as rejection. But what if it's actually evidence of depth? Think about it. You don't become frustrated with someone who means nothing to you. You don't feel triggered by someone you don't value. The emotional charge itself is proof that something sacred still lives underneath. The memory of soul recognition. One of the hardest parts of this journey is that the divine feminine remembers. She remembers the first moment their eyes locked and time felt suspended. She remembers the conversations that felt like home. She remembers the energetic pull that made logic irrelevant. That kind of recognition doesn't fade easily. Even during separation. Even during silence. Even during conflict. And this memory becomes both her strength and her pain, because she knows what's possible. She has felt it. And when the present reality doesn't match that initial depth, it creates inner tension. Not because the love disappeared, but because it hasn't been fulfilled yet. Separation amplifies truth. There's a reason separation often intensifies emotions rather than diminishing them. Distance removes distraction. Silence removes surface-level interaction. What's left is raw awareness. In separation, the divine feminine may try to convince herself she's done. I'm over it. I deserve better. I don't care anymore. But then something small happens. A song, a memory, a dream, and suddenly the emotions resurface. Not chaotic but undeniable. Why? Because love rooted in soul recognition doesn't operate on convenience. It operates on resonance. And resonance doesn't disappear just because circumstances become difficult. The protective shell. So if love is still present, why does she appear so resistant? Because she has built a protective shell. Not to block love, but to protect her heart from further imbalance. When someone has been emotionally inconsistent, the nervous system adapts. It learns to brace. It learns to anticipate withdrawal. It learns that opening fully may result in pain. So she appears guarded, more logical, more detached, more firm. But here's the truth. The softer she once was with him is still inside her. She just won't access that softness without safety. And that isn't punishment. It's wisdom. The longing she doesn't show. There is a side of the divine feminine that few people see during this phase. The quiet longing. She may not text. She may not reach out. She may not express vulnerability. But internally, she still wonders, is he thinking about me? Is he healing? Does he feel this connection too? Her pride may stay silent, but her heart is still listening. This is why the frustration feels so intense. Because longing without reassurance creates inner conflict. Part of her wants to surrender to love. Another part refuses to surrender to uncertainty. And so she holds both. Love transformed, not lost. Here's an important shift. The love hasn't disappeared. It has transformed. Early stage love is often emotional, reactive, intoxicating. Mature love is steady, conscious, self-aware. When the divine feminine pulls back, she isn't erasing love. She's refining it. She's moving from, I need you to choose me, to, I choose myself first. And paradoxically, this makes her love purer. Because now it is no longer rooted in attachment. It is rooted in alignment. If he rises, she will meet him. If he doesn't, she will still stand whole. That is not indifference. That is evolution. The pain of unexpressed depth. One of the deepest frustrations comes from feeling unseen. The divine feminine often feels emotions in layers. She senses shifts in tone, energy fluctuations, subtle emotional undercurrents. When the divine masculine minimizes or avoids emotional depth, she feels alone in her awareness. And loneliness inside love is painful. She doesn't need perfection. She needs presence. She doesn't need constant reassurance. She needs authenticity. The frustration intensifies when she knows he is capable of depth, but chooses distance instead. Because potential without action feels like abandonment. The question beneath the anger. If you strip away the irritation, the silence, the guarded responses, you will find one question beneath it all. Are you willing to meet me here? That's it. Not, will you worship me? Not, will you chase me? But, will you stand beside me emotionally? The hidden love beneath the frustration is a desire for partnership. Not fantasy. Not drama. Not chaos. Partnership. And until that possibility is either confirmed or released, her heart remains in tension. Why it still hurts? Pain is proportional to meaning. The more someone means to you, the deeper their absence or inconsistency affects you. If this were just attraction, she would move on easily. If this were just ego, she would replace him quickly. But this feels different. It feels intertwined. That's why she tries to detach, and finds that detachment isn't simple, because what she's grieving isn't just a person. She's grieving the version of them that felt aligned, the future that felt possible, the safety that almost existed. And grief doesn't mean love was wrong. It means love was real. the silent devotion. Here is something rarely spoken. Even when the divine feminine withdraws, she often continues loving quietly. She may pray for his healing. She may send light energetically. She may hold compassion even when she feels hurt. This silent devotion is not weakness. It is evidence of her depth. But devotion without reciprocity becomes draining. So she learns to redirect that love inward, to her growth, her purpose, her expansion. And when she does that, something powerful happens. Her energy stabilizes. Her glow returns. Her softness becomes selective rather than automatic. The real revelation. The divine feminine's frustration is not proof that love has died. It is proof that love is demanding evolution. Underneath the guarded exterior, she still believes in sacred union. She still believes in healed masculinity. She still desires polarity, protection, presence. But she will no longer accept chaos disguised as passion. And that is the shift. Because hidden beneath the frustration is not hatred. It is hope. Hope that the connection can rise. Hope that both energies can mature. Hope that love can become stable instead of sporadic. And if that hope didn't exist, there would be no frustration at all. There would only be silence. So if you find yourself in this space, where irritation and longing coexist, understand this. You are not confused. You are layered. You are feeling the tension between what is and what could be. And that tension is sacred, because it forces truth to surface. In the next chapter, we will explore what happens when both energies begin to heal, and whether this hidden love can transform into conscious union. Until then, remember, frustration is not the death of love. It is love asking to be met at a higher level. At this point in the journey, something becomes undeniable. The frustration, the resistance, the longing, the exhaustion. None of it is random. None of it is punishment. It is pressure. Pressure designed to force evolution. Because polarity, the sacred dance between divine feminine and divine masculine, cannot survive in distortion forever. It either matures or it collapses. So the real question becomes, what actually needs to heal? Not just in him, not just in her, but in the polarity itself. Understanding true polarity. Before we talk about healing, we need clarity. Polarity is not dominance and submission. It is not control and compliance. It is not chasing and running. True polarity is energetic contrast that creates attraction through balance. The masculine provides direction, structure, groundedness. The feminine provides flow, intuition, emotional depth. When both are healthy, they amplify each other. When one is wounded, the dynamic destabilizes. For a long time, the divine feminine may believe the issue is simply that the masculine needs to wake up. But deeper healing requires honesty. Both energies are being triggered for a reason, and both must rise. What the divine masculine must heal. Let's begin with the masculine energy. Wounded masculine energy often manifests as emotional avoidance, fear of vulnerability, inconsistent communication, ego-driven pride, difficulty committing, escaping into work, distractions or silence. At its core, this isn't cruelty. It's fear. Fear of inadequacy, fear of failure, fear of not being enough to lead, protect, or provide. Many divine masculines were conditioned to suppress emotion, to equate vulnerability with weakness, to believe that love is something you feel but not something you articulate. So when faced with the emotional depth of the divine feminine, they can feel exposed. And exposure triggers retreat. Healing for the masculine requires one major shift: emotional accountability, not grand gestures, not dramatic confessions, consistency, integrity between words and actions, the courage to say, "I'm afraid," instead of disappearing. When the masculine becomes emotionally grounded, something magical happens. The feminine relaxes. Because true masculine energy doesn't need to overpower. It stabilizes. What the divine feminine must heal. Now let's speak honestly about the feminine side. The divine feminine often believes her only role is to hold space, to wait, to nurture, to understand endlessly. But wounded feminine energy can manifest as Overgiving, overanalyzing, trying to heal the masculine, emotional overextension, abandoning self-needs for connection, staying in potential. Instead of reality, the feminine's greatest wound is often self-abandonment. She senses the imbalance. She feels the inconsistency, but she hopes love will fix it. Healing for the feminine requires a different kind of courage. Detachment without bitterness. Choosing herself without closing her heart. Trusting that love does not require sacrifice of dignity. True feminine power is not chasing alignment. It is embodying it. When the divine feminine stops overfunctioning emotionally, the dynamic shifts dramatically. Because polarity cannot rebalance if one side keeps compensating. Inner union before outer union. Here is the truth that changes everything. Outer union cannot stabilize without inner union. Inner union means the masculine within you is disciplined, purposeful, and grounded. The feminine within you is intuitive, soft, and self-honoring. Most people are trying to fix the external partner while ignoring their internal imbalance. For example, if the divine feminine constantly feels anxious about his silence, it may reveal her own inner masculine lacks stability. If the divine masculine avoids emotional conversations, it may reveal his inner feminine is suppressed. Healing polarity begins within. When your inner masculine and feminine are integrated, you stop seeking completion externally. You seek resonance instead. And that changes the entire dynamic. The power of energetic withdrawal. One of the most misunderstood parts of this journey is energetic withdrawal. When the divine feminine pulls her energy back, not to punish but to recalibrate, it forces reflection. For the masculine, this can be confronting. Suddenly the safety net of her emotional presence is gone. Suddenly he must feel the absence. But here's the key. Energetic withdrawal is not manipulation when it's rooted in self-respect. It becomes manipulation only when used to control. Healthy withdrawal says, I will not abandon myself to maintain this connection. And paradoxically, that often reactivates balanced pursuit. Because healed masculine energy naturally moves toward what feels aligned, not what feels desperate. Rebuilding polarity through action. Healing is not just emotional awareness. It requires behavior change. For the divine masculine, this looks like initiating communication, following through on promises, expressing feelings clearly, creating structure for the connection, demonstrating reliability over time. For the divine feminine, this looks like setting boundaries calmly, stopping over-explaining, receiving without overgiving, allowing space without panic, maintaining her own mission. Enjoy polarity rebuilds when both energies act differently, not just think differently. Because attraction is sustained by consistency, not intensity. The shift from drama to devotion. Immature polarity thrives on drama, push and pull, silence and pursuit, passion and withdrawal. Mature polarity thrives on devotion, not obsession. Devotion. Devotion is steady. It is chosen daily. It is expressed through presence. When both energies heal, the chaos dissolves. The connection no longer feels like a roller coaster. It feels grounded. Passion doesn't disappear. It deepens. Because now it rests on safety. The fear of true alignment. Ironically, sometimes both energies fear what they claim to want. True alignment removes excuses. If he steps up fully, she must receive fully. If she softens fully, he must lead fully. And that level of responsibility can be intimidating. Healing polarity requires maturity on both sides. It requires dropping the ego narratives. He should already know. She expects too much. If I try, I might fail. Because love at this level is not casual. It is transformational. And transformation requires vulnerability. The moment balance returns, there is a specific feeling when polarity begins to heal. Conversations feel calmer. Silence feels neutral instead of threatening. Effort feels mutual. Desire feels grounded instead of anxious. The divine feminine no longer feels she must carry the emotional weight. The divine masculine no longer feels he must protect himself from emotional exposure. Instead, both feel safe. And safety is the foundation of sustainable polarity, the ultimate truth about healing. Healing polarity does not guarantee reunion, but it guarantees growth. Sometimes both energies rise, and union becomes possible. Sometimes one rises faster, and the path diverges. But either way, the healing benefits both souls. Because the real purpose of this dynamic was never suffering. It was expansion. Expansion into balanced love. Expansion into self-respect. Expansion into emotional maturity. And once you reach that level internally, you stop fearing loss. Because aligned love cannot miss you, can only meet you. Final reflection before the closing chapter. So ask yourself, where am I still overcompensating? Where am I still avoiding responsibility? Where am I seeking externally what I have not stabilized internally? Healing polarity is not about fixing the other. It is about becoming energetically whole. And when two whole energies meet, the connection no longer feels like resistance. Feels like recognition without fear. We've peeled back every layer. The surface irritation, the emotional exhaustion, the resentment, the longing, the hidden love beneath the frustration, the healing required on both sides. And now we arrive at the truth that changes everything. The divine feminine does not hate masculine energy. She rejects distortion. She rejects immaturity disguised as strength. She rejects inconsistency disguised as mystery. She rejects avoidance disguised as independence. But true masculine energy? She doesn't resist it. She relaxes into it. And that is the final revelation. The misunderstanding that started it all. For a long time, it may have looked like the divine feminine had grown cold, less patient, less tolerant, less willing to understand. But what if that shift wasn't bitterness? What if it was discernment? Awakening sharpens perception. What once felt romantic now feels chaotic. What once felt intense now feels unstable. What once felt magnetic now feels draining. The divine feminine didn't become difficult. She became aligned. And alignment creates friction with anything misaligned. That friction is not hatred. It is evolution. The sacred purpose of the resistance phase. Every stage of this journey had a purpose. The attraction awakened remembrance. The separation awakened independence. The frustration awakened boundaries. The resistance awakened self-respect. Nothing was wasted. The moments she cried. The nights she questioned everything. The time she felt foolish for loving so deeply. All of it refined her. Resistance was not a detour. It was initiation. Because without resistance, she might have continued overgiving. Without resistance, he might have continued avoiding. Without resistance, polarity would have stayed imbalanced. So the tension was necessary. Growth often feels like conflict before it feels like clarity. The shift into sovereignty. The true transformation happens when the divine feminine stops asking, "Why won't he change?" and starts asking, "What standard am I embodying?" Sovereignty is quiet. It doesn't beg. It doesn't chase. It doesn't threaten. It simply becomes unavailable for anything beneath its value. This is not ego. This is self-honor. When she stands in sovereignty, something remarkable happens. Her energy changes. She no longer radiates anxiety. She radiates stability. She no longer seeks validation. She embodies worth. And that shift alone recalibrates the dynamic. Because healed masculine energy is drawn to strength it can respect, not wounds it can avoid. The masculine's awakening moment. For many divine masculines, awakening doesn't happen through lectures. It happens through absence. When her energy withdraws, not in anger but in peace, the mirror becomes unavoidable. He feels the silence differently. He notices the missing warmth. He recognizes the stability she once provided. And for the first time, he may ask himself, was I protecting myself? Or sabotaging something sacred? Masculine growth often begins with accountability, not shame. Accountability, the realization that love requires participation, that depth requires courage, that devotion requires action. And when he reaches that awareness, polarity begins to rebalance. What real union actually looks like. Let's clear another illusion. Sacred union is not dramatic. It is not chaotic. It is not built on constant intensity. Real union is calm. It feels like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. In healed polarity, the masculine leads with integrity. The feminine responds with openness. Communication flows without games. Silence feels peaceful, not threatening. There is desire, but it is grounded. There is passion, but it is safe. There is independence, but it does not threaten connection. Union becomes less about obsession and more about partnership. And that is the love the divine feminine was always waiting for. Not fantasy, stability. When union does not happen, here is a truth that must also be honored. Sometimes both energies grow, but not toward each other. Sometimes healing reveals incompatibility, and that too is sacred. Because the real goal was never a specific person. It was alignment. If the divine feminine fully heals and the masculine remains stagnant, she will no longer feel pulled. Not because she stopped loving, but because she outgrew distortion. Aligned love cannot miss you. It either rises to meet you, or it releases you. And both outcomes are victories. The deeper message behind it all. So what was this journey really about? It was never about proving worth. It was never about chasing someone into awakening. It was never about tolerating emotional breadcrumbs. It was about remembering your own wholeness. The divine feminine's dislike of masculine energy was actually her soul rejecting imbalance. Her spirit saying, I am ready for more. More honesty, more stability, more reciprocity, more depth that does not disappear under pressure. And that declaration is powerful. Because once she embodies that frequency, she cannot attract less. A question for you. Let me ask you something deeply personal. Are you resisting masculine energy? Or are you resisting being treated below your worth? Are you frustrated because love failed? Or because love has not yet matured? Are you pulling away out of anger? Or out of alignment? Sit with that. Because clarity changes everything. The radiant feminine. When the divine feminine fully integrates this lesson, she becomes radiant. Not because she has someone beside her, but because she stands whole within herself. Her softness returns, but it is discerning. Her intuition sharpens, but it is calm. Her love deepens, but it is balanced. She no longer fears losing someone, because she refuses to lose herself again. And that energy is magnetic in its purest form. The ultimate truth about masculine energy. Healthy masculine energy does not intimidate the divine feminine. Supports her. It does not silence her intuition. It listens to it. It does not compete with her strength. It honors it. It does not run from emotional depth. It meets it. The moment masculine energy becomes grounded and conscious, her resistance dissolves naturally. Because there was never hatred. Only a refusal to accept less than sacred. Your invitation. If you are walking this journey right now, feeling the tension between love and resistance, understand this. You are not too emotional. You are not too intense. You are not too demanding. You are awakening. And awakening requires recalibration. Trust the resistance when it guides you back to yourself. Trust the longing when it reveals your depth. Trust the process when it feels uncomfortable. Because every layer you peel away brings you closer to balanced love. Whether with this person or another aligned soul. The divine feminine's dislike of masculine energy was never rejection. It was refinement. It was the fire that burned away illusion. It was the boundary that protected sacred love. It was the mirror that demanded growth. And now the final question is yours. Will you choose wounded cycles? Or will you choose conscious union? If this message resonated with you, comment below. I choose alignment. Subscribe for more deep truths about polarity, healing, and sacred connection. And share this with someone who needs to remember that resistance is not the end of love. It is the beginning of evolution. Because the highest form of love is not chasing, it is choosing. And when both energies choose consciously, union becomes inevitable.